Hello there, this is Anshu Katha with Bright News. Welcome to our semester closing broadcast. Tonight we have some exciting stories for you on the future of sports in America, some information on the environment from Mac, and finally, our WONK correspondent Zill will be doing a 2017 recap. Earlier today, Mogul and CEO Mark Cuban made a statement on how parents need to make decisions on what sport they want their kids to play, asking if parents would rather have their kids play a game where they might not remember anything after 10 years, or if they play basketball. Mr. Cuban's points do not come in vain, but back on an ongoing discussion of sports and football in the future, as America's #1 sport. The competition is plagued by ethics scandals, public and private incidences of violence, and consistent sexual assault problems, all while being maintained through the unpopular leadership of Roger Goodell. With so many problems at hand for the sport, one must ask, is it time for America to pick a new sport? And if so, who takes the mantle? Basketball? Basketball has begun to emerge as the premier sport in America. New data shows that viewers are watching basketball games more frequently and with higher viewership than standard football games. In fact, last Thursday's game for the NBA with the Lakers playing the 76ers had more views than the Falcons versus the Saints. After an interview with DC local Paige Pearson, it's clear to see that for parents, the fear of injuries their kids may sustain is very high. Paige has a brother who was a starting quarterback in high school, but in a freak football accident, he broke his hand. Paige then stated after the injury, other parents on the team began to pull their children out of the program, as well as her parents not letting her brother play football again. On the other side of this note, basketball has been gaining a lot of youth momentum. The prime demographic for the NBA are people between the ages of 20 and 25, while the NFL holds a 20-year older demographic at 45 to 65. It also becomes easier to see which sport is going to take the future of broadcasting based on what team owners are doing. NBA owners are valuing NBA teams at higher rates, and more tech-savvy CEOs aim to implement technology and initiatives that they have through basketball arena construction. In contrast, the NFL has owners that support archaic methods of entertainment, refusing to change and adjust in-game and on-TV entertainment, while the NBA continues to innovate and expand customer acquisition through social initiatives and new in-game technologies. The NFL continues to lag behind. As time goes on, the two sports will continue to develop their bases at different rates, and at the moment, the more sustainable common denominator is football. But as 2018 approaches and the years come to pass, keep your eyes open because the tide is a-changing. Now I'm going to hand it off to Mac for some environmental news.
Hi Anshu, on this unseasonably warm evening in Washington, D.C. The Chinese have clearly been very busy with temperatures up for much of the planet, D.C. being over 5 degrees warmer than usual for some months. As the planet began its fight for survival, one animated Dorito stood out from the pack. Going against 97% of the scientific community and countless anecdotal evidence, Donald Trump pulled out from the Paris Climate Accord to the dismay of many Americans and more than just a few large businesses. As the United States gathered its toys from the proverbial sandbox and left, states such as California and New York rushed to fill the void, committing to move to clean power and abide by the Paris Agreement, with California Governor Jerry Brown becoming the darling of much of the environmental movement. Trump, not content with his initial assaults on the environment, began dismantling one of the cornerstones of environmental protection in the United States, the Clean Water Act. Under President Obama, the EPA designated any body of water that had flow as waters of the United States, these being subject to the provisions of the Clean Water Act. These bodies of water provide drinking water for over 117 million Americans. Facing backlash from many of his golfing partners, or just afraid they might point out his fake Time magazine covers, Trump began rolling back protections for many of these rivers and lakes all across the country. Seems like now would be a good time to invest in one of those Brita filters. As the fight over the environment intensified, so did the natural disasters that struck the U.S. The 2017 Atlantic hurricane season was one of the most active on record and certainly the most costly, causing over $400 billion in damage, most of which was caused by 3 hurricanes, Harvey, Irma, and Maria. Hurricane Harvey slammed into southern Texas, summoning images of New Orleans during Katrina, stranding survivors all around Houston, and raising issues of toxic waste flowing from the city's many petrochemical refineries. Quickly following, Hurricane Irma laid waste to much of the Caribbean and Florida, flooding Miami and devastating island nations. Not to be outdone, however, Hurricane Maria savaged Puerto Rico and the outlying islands, leaving many without power for weeks and months to come, with some communities in the U.S. protectorate only regaining power just this week. But Mother Nature wasn't finished with her display of displeasure. In October, Northern California burned, with 12 separate fires burning over 245,000 acres, displacing thousands and killing at least 44 people. Just as state authorities had finished mopping up, new fires erupted in Southern California, displacing hundreds of thousands, shutting down some of the busiest freeways in the nation, and turning images of the morning commute into something straight from Michael Bay as fire and ash rained down over Los Angeles. Before the flames could be put out in California, however, they jumped to the airwaves as Trump, in an unprecedented move, cut Barrier's national monument in more than half, leaving sacred Native American sites open for development and proving that Trump is uncomfortable with more than just the size of his hands. However, there was a bright spot this year as scientists all across the country took to the streets to protest the Trump administration's continual refusal to craft policy grounded in science. As they squinted in the sunlight and lugged admittedly punny signs down Pennsylvania Avenue, scientists let it be known they would not be ignored, after peer review, of course. Over to you, Zil.
Thanks, Mac, and may I say the environment's downturn may be the best representation of how this year has been as a whole. From sexual assault allegations, shootings, and possibly the craziest peaceful transition of power, bright news tonight. We'll take a look back at the most significant events of the tumultuous 2017. We began this year on a high note as then President Barack Obama addressed the nation for the final time, and he called upon us, the American people, to have a conversation with our neighbors and not let partisan divide get the worst of us. So we did the exact opposite. On January 20th at noon, the United States swore in a new president and everything went into chaos. Donald Trump then used his then press secretary, Sean Spicer, claiming that he had the biggest crowd in attendance of an inauguration ever. This wasn't the case. This began an endless cycle of false news that would come out of the White House, with 5.5 lies coming from his office every single day, according to the New York Times. But in all this darkness, there is hope. On January 21st, just the day after his inauguration, people took to the streets to protest his grotesque nature of his agenda. At the Women's March and the Women's Marches across the country, the Washington one specifically drew over 1 million people and was larger than President Trump's inauguration. Despite these controversies and protests, the Trump administration and the world pushed on. The U.S. got a brand new slate of cabinet officials, including the only tie in American history on Secretary Betsy DeVos, who with the help of Mike Pence was confirmed as Secretary of Education despite no background in the subject area. And as parents cringed for their children, dads screamed in fear as Star Wars star Harrison Ford was involved with a near-death experience while he was flying a plane that crashed outside of Wayne Airport in Orange County. Ford escaped with minor injuries, but honestly, is there anything that man can't do? Well, Ford escaped with minor injuries, La La Land did not. The 89th Academy Awards, Warren Beatty and Faye Dunaway came on stage to present an award for Best Picture, called out the wrong name. As they were about to roll the credits and La La Land soaked in their glory, the host ran back on stage to tell the world that Moonlight was the actual winner. While dazed and confused, they gladly gave up the golden statue and said goodnight to one of the craziest moments this year. But then again, the Patriots beat the Falcons in the Super Bowl 34-28. Of course. Attorney General Jeff Sessions, who was a Donald Trump supporter from the very beginning, was confirmed as Attorney General. Well, very controversially, he was going to be leading any investigations of the Justice Department. This caused an uproar, and the Department of Justice was eventually pressured into appointing a special counsel into Trump's Russian ties. But more on that later. And just like that, Britain was forced to vote. On April 18th, British Prime Minister Theresa May tried to gain more power over the Brexit controversy, but the results would give her and her Conservative Party a much more different outcome. More Labour seats were won in a snap election, and the Conservatives were now forced into a hung parliament for the foreseeable future. You are entering the no Bill O'Reilly zone. On April 19th, Fox News fired their most popular host for sexual assault allegations and started a mass firing of Hollywood figures. This would claim the career of dozens of figures such as Harvey Weinstein, Kevin Spacey, Matt Lauer, and dozens of others. The scandal broke in one of the biggest names of film. This movement is arguably the biggest story of our year. Internationally, another election was held in France where independent Emmanuel Macron defeated Marine Le Pen in a huge victory for center-leftists. But back to America. On April 7th, Donald Trump fired James Comey, the then director of the FBI, for looking into his ties with Russia, which triggered on May 17, 2017, Deputy Attorney General Rod Reinstein to appoint Robert Mueller, a former director of the FBI, to serve as special counsel for the United States Department of Justice, as he looked into Trump's Russian ties. The investigation is still ongoing, but has resulted in so far the indictment of Paul Manafort and Michael Flynn. Just as the world realized Trump's actions, a tragedy struck. On May 22nd, a suicide bombing in Manchester Arena killed 22 and injured 59 after an Ariana Grande concert. ISIS was linked to the attack, but despite their attacks, the group is still losing ground over the past few years. I'm hearing from my producer we need to speed it up, so we're going to rapid fire through the summer. Trump pulled out of the Paris Climate Agreement, Puerto Rico declared the Zika crisis was over, Montenegro joined NATO, James Comey testifies, Theresa May lost her seat and possibly her mind, Penguins win at hockey, Warriors beat the Cavs, radical socialists fired into a crowd of baseball and congressional representatives, Facebook is now Big Brother with 2 billion users worldwide, Germany legalized gay marriage, Chris Christie enjoyed the beach while his state was in poverty, White House Press Secretary Sean Spicer resigned after the appointment of Anthony Scaramucci, the Mooch resigned 10 days later, Jeff Bezos is really rich, Venezuela's at war with itself, Taylor Swift wins her sexual assault lawsuit against a DJ, Steve Bannon's out of the White House, hurricanes are officially upon us. Okay, back to more in-depth coverage. Hurricane season is officially started in June, but the worst of it did not make landfall until September 20th. When Hurricane Maria hit Puerto Rico as a Category 5 hurricane, and then went on to kill and ravage the Puerto Rican mainland, as of November 20th, at least 547 people are dead, and 499 just coming out of the island of Puerto Rico. The president has gone on to say that the efforts of the island's recovery are going well, but more than 40% of the island is still without power as of today. The criticism of Donald Trump did not end there, as NFL players, owners, and even fans took a knee, locked arms, or stayed in their dressing rooms during the national anthem in protest against the comments made by the president. This movement, spearheaded by Colin Kaepernick, has helped him transition from football star to civil rights activist. But civility ended on October 1st during the Route 91 Music Festival, as country boots turned red when Stephen Paddock killed 58 people and 489 at a concert in Las Vegas, which would become the deadliest mass shooting in American history. But the community banded together and filled blood banks and raised $12 million in hospital funds. While Nevada mourned, California's wine country ran dry, and wildfires ignited in Northern California killed 41 and charred most of this year's harvest. But turning into Southern California, the career of Harvey Weinstein turned vile, as dozens of women accused him of sexual assault, and he was rightfully fired from his own company. Shortly after these allegations, actress Alyssa Milano tweeted, "If you've been sexually harassed or assaulted, write Me Too," giving the name to the movement that turned from Hollywood to politics. In November, allegations of pedophilia came out against Roy Moore, Alabama Senate candidate, and Al Franken, senator from Minnesota, would soon take to the Senate floor to accept his fate, that he must resign after 7 women accused him of sexual misconduct. The woman coming forward has earned them a place in history, and we're awarded Time Magazine's Person of the Year. But as the calendar begins to turn, we have at least one thing to be happy for and look forward to in 2018. There is a royal wedding and all the fanfare that comes with it. This year can objectively be said as rough, but in hindsight, the esteemed Vice President Joe Biden was awarded the Medal of Freedom by the greatest president in the history of our generation, Barack Obama. So as 2020 looms, your move, Joe. Your move. I'm your want correspondent, Zill, and on behalf of Mac and Anshu and all of us here at Bright News, have a super mug and have a better 2018.